Okay, thank you.
So very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, joining us here in India, and those who are, from different parts of the world. A very good morning and a very good evening to you. We are here today, on a very interesting subject, something that CII has anchored over the past 15 years, right from the time India turned 60, a journey from India at 60 to India at 75. And I think as we celebrate what we have achieved as an economy, I think it's also time for us to think forward to see how we can, strengthen the position where we are today in India and really envision what India would look like in 2047 as we move towards India at 100. And really, this journey actually started when, the guest we have here with us today, I would like to say Kamath was the president of CII. And, I still remember, him saying at that point in time that it is the India of the young people. It is the India that is going to really, of the people of different backgrounds coming together to unlock the true power of what a diverse country like ours has, but also built on very strong fundamentals of our history. And, I think, Kamath, your inspiration at that point, enabled people like me and many others to sustain our engagement around this initiative. And here we are today as we celebrate our Amrit Mahotsav, and our Prime Minister in a recent discussion also with CII encouraged us to really envision what India would look like in the next 25 years, to capture different aspirations as well as experience of what it will take for us to build that India. And today we have with us not only the past president of CII, but of course a person who needs no introduction, not only in an Indian context but in a global context. The man who really built ICICI to the institution that it is today, having been there for a first stint, then having moved to Southeast Asia and then rejoined and spent over 20 years to build it to the institution that it is. Shri K.V. Kamath has also served as the chairman of Infosys. He has been the first president of the new development bank set up by BRICS, currently chairman of the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development, Padma Bhushan, of course, somebody who I think has achieved so much over these years that we are really privileged, Kamath dear, to have you here with us today and pick your brains on how do we really, take India from a $3 trillion to a $40 trillion economy over the next 25 years. And, I just want to kickstart this conversation by reminding you of a conversation that we had. You may not remember, but I often quote, we were talking of how do we engage large number of farmers in India to really think about what India can be. And, when I proposed the number of 1 million to you, you had said, why don't we add a zero to that? Right? I think the ability for you to see size and scale very differently is really what, also is the encouragement for the topic today. How do we really add a zero and plus, to a $3 trillion economy? Of course, we've seen great progress. The last $1 trillion got added in 5 years. The one prior to that took 12 years. And the first trillion, of course, took, over 5 decades. So if we were to really turbocharge and accelerate the growth of India from where we are, it's a very ambitious target. But if you were to see India moving at this size and scale, what, in your view, is the strategy, the roadmap, and how can we see this happen?
Thank you, Rajan. I think I warmly remember going back 15 years. I was 60 then, I'm 75, so I have traversed those 15 years doing various things. But coming to the subject matter, I think the goal is achievable. I will put it in context in a moment. The context is whenever you set a goal, what is the environment? What are the ground conditions? What are the boundary conditions? All these need to be looked at. And if you look at India, there is such a lot to be done. What's called Amrit Kal to me is what needs to be done and what needs to be done over the 25-year horizon. So it gives you ample opportunity to grow in double digits. Now, whether we'll grow in double digits above that or we'll just fall short, we will see. But if you did not have the growth opportunity, you would have fallen short. So growth opportunity, just in 1 minute, everywhere you look around you, there is an opportunity. You need to build infrastructure, whether it is road, whether it is high-speed rail, bullet trains, so on. Ports, airports, telecommunication, we are on par with the best in the world. Urban rejuvenation itself is a big, our cities need to be rebuilt. Transportation needs to be provided. Water supply, sewage needs to be improved. So I see opportunity all around. Second layer, you then have the housing opportunity to house 1.4 billion people plus, most of whom have about, I would say, which they dream of. So we have that opportunity. We can go down and peel this opportunity onion, as it were, and we see things to do over the Amrit Kal that we have. I think it is the collective effort to drive this at the municipal level, at the state level, national level, public sector, private sector, which will help us get this. So just to give this nuance, I would think, given some challenges that we faced in our early efforts to roll out infrastructure by the private sector, for a variety of reasons, we won't dwell into that. Just now, the government is, I would say, the chief driver of infrastructure in the country, and it will probably be for a few years till we build the confidence that the private sector can go ahead and do this at speed, scale, and not get stuck. I would think till then, the government is required to drive infrastructure. But almost everything else, the private sector has to do, has been doing, and will do. And the opportunity is there. So to me, the pie is so huge that achieving this target that we are setting, 40 billion in the next 25 years, is a doable, a very much doable thing. I will just add one more a layer to this and then go on to your next thought. That is, this is looking at conventional growth drivers. All that I talked about are conventional growth drivers, which we need to do. There's another layer which has come up in the last 2-3 years, just 2-3 years in India, which is the digital layer. And we have not yet factored in the digital opportunity into the overall economic growth opportunity. If I look at near numbers, let's take China, for example, 30 to 35% of the economy is digital today. In India, probably it is less than 5%. I don't know, 3, 4, 5%. Now, even if we were to go to 25% of the overall pie, and we are going to grow at 8, 9% in all the other areas that we're talking of, digital will take you well over 10%. So to me, aspiring for a 10% growth is what the nation needs to do. Opportunity is there. I think funding will happen. Funding will happen through a variety of, your internal generation. As you grow, the surplus is thrown up, will provide support. There will be appropriate inflows as necessary from the globe, because this is going to be a very attractive destination. I would believe primarily it will be by equity, could be by debt. But I would think the cash generation in this country itself will drive this growth. So I don't see a challenge in opportunity. I don't see a challenge in people, their entrepreneurial drive and the will to drive things. And I don't see an opportunity in funding. So I am an optimist, and I believe the target that we are talking of is indeed achievable. You're on mute.
I said your optimism is so infectious, and I think you very well articulated both the opportunity, the different layers, and also the funding. But you rightly said that the infrastructure plays where government is deeply involved. Everything else, industry is kind of taking a lead and building upon. But how does really government and industry work together to unlock this vision? Of course, we'll have to take many other stakeholders along. I think there are new emerging technologies that like what you rightly said, will need to be taken into effect when we are looking at issues of maybe climate change and others. So there are many other aspects that come into this entire growth piece, but particularly government and industry working together. How have you seen that work in India? How have you seen it work in other parts of the world? Where do you see that?
Well, See, what I've noticed, Rajan, is that wherever there are, say, take infrastructure, for example, there again are several touch points where the government is the key, I would say, mover. One, land, things to do around the environment, environmental clearances, forest. Then you move on to certain industries, mineral and other rights. It could be digital rights, it could be mineral rights, anything that is government in the government's domain. I think some of these, I think it's better that the government does it, because still we go through the learning curve that, the allocation of these or the auctioning of these or whatever is the methodology to make sure that the private sector is involved is properly set. And we have enough lessons from the last decade, as it were, or the early part of the last decade, to see what could go wrong. And if we avoid those, I think then the government and the private sector, private sector can take the ball and run, if we put it that way, with the government playing a supportive role. But till that is done, I think the government's approach and doing it through the government window is absolutely appropriate. But if you see areas where they believe that the private sector is confident to go and run with the ball, they let you go. For example, telecommunication. In India, it is entirely private sector, or rather predominantly private sector. Not so in other comparator countries, where it is still predominantly public sector. Airports is now slowly getting to be predominantly private sector. Ports, private sector. So I think slowly the mix is changing. And this, I think, in a way is good, because we will then have a tested model, as it were, in which the private sector can step in and take the ball forward.
I think what you're saying has actually never happened in the history of mankind, right? Never as a country of 1.4 billion people, democratically elected, government and industry working together to bring such a huge shift of transformation. So obviously there will be innovation and learning, as we go along. But, as we look at this size and scale of this opportunity, right? And I know you rightly mentioned that the funding, etc., is available. But I think, banking and finance sector in India will have to play a very large role also to see how we can make this process very inclusive, right? Because we can't see anyone left behind. So how do you see that particular sector? Because that's where you've had such a rich experience. If you look 25 years, how do you envision the banking and finance sector in India?
It's a very interesting question, Rajan. Again, if I look at comparators who, it is in the 60s, it was the tiger economies. Then in the 70s, it became Southeast Asia. And then more recently, you had the China example. So you've got these examples from the developing world. And one thing that you notice very clearly is as economic growth goes near double digits, the financial sector, and it's not just banking, the entire financial sector grows at maybe 1.5x to 1.75x. So if we are aspiring for 10% growth, this sector will grow at between 15 and 17.5%. That itself provides the momentum for growth. Now, here is an interesting point that you made, inclusive growth. I'll give a small example. We at ICICI in 2005-2006 dreamt that we will bank the unbanked, which meant we will take banking to the masses. We had made initial attempts in terms of laying out technology, which got embraced in the urban areas. But when we went into rural India and tried to roll it out, connectivity was just not there. So honestly speaking, and we will admit it, and we admitted it that time, we had to roll back or bank the unbanked proposition, because we did not have that ability to aspire and conquer that horizon of growth. We called it a horizon of growth. But come 2014, see what happened. In the space of 6 months, under Prime Minister Modi ji, we could bank the unbanked. So the number of accounts that are opened, Jan Dhan accounts, much more than what was, basically meant that every Indian had a bank account, which meant that one, technology had fallen in place and mindset had fallen in place. There was alignment of to do, as it were, and it happened. I think that technology development has kept a pace. So today, whether it is for any financial product, from your savings in a bank account to a mutual fund to wherever, to insurance, and transaction, of course, the digital economy that we talked about, the digital transaction economy, everything is possible anywhere in the country. And in doing that, we have indeed opened up new paradigms. I'm sure we'll talk about that. So to me, reaching the mass, reaching the unbanked, reaching the poor I think certainly is possible through what has opened up in the technology, finance, I would say combined as it were, or continuum as it were. So it becomes that much easier. So what we need to do then is try to see where is it that finance is needed. Is finance affordable? And can you structure it in a way that you can lend it easily and recover it easily? I think that's what is happening. I will just touch upon in that, even pushing this envelope further, are the new digitech finance companies in India, because they have no baggage. Their proposition is nimble, agile. The technology they've come out with is nimble and agile, and they are able to reach out to the customer as it is. Today, you have much better, I would say, information on the customer because of CIBIL and other scoring that is there as to the customer's behavior. And I think globally we are seeing the rise of what I call not necessary financial information to look at the credit worthiness of a customer. Given all this, I think this is playing into an opportunity for the financial services industry to serve the poorest of the poor through properly structuring it. The key here is, of course, keeping interest rates low, and of course, with that, inflation has to be low. But here again, very interestingly, if you see the last 2 years, 3 years during COVID, the policies adopted by the central government and the Reserve Bank of India in encouraging a system to keep liquidity and keeping interest rates low as compared to other domains. Because we typically would have a big push, inflation of say 5%, you should get your interest rate to 7% and so on and so forth. But this time around, despite the world running a high inflation and trying to change its own approach by keeping interest rates low, we kept interest rates stable or low. We have, in a way, beaten inflation, and we have kept growth going. So I think the Indian model in how to manage in this sort of a situation is probably going to be a textbook case as we go along. But I'm thinking of ourselves. This bodes good for us. Keep interest rates low, let technology pervade, and let it then bring up the mass through whatever assistance they need in the financial world.
I think you talked about the Indian model, right? And the Indianness going out to the world is so applicable in so many areas, right? Well, of course, what you talked about, this continuum model around COVID, but even the point around technology and finance and the people behind it, right? I think what India has been able to create, or Indians have been able to create using technology and finance globally, I think is something that has gone into the sweat and blood of many of the large tech companies as well. But as we look at India, making this transformative switch both within the country, right, with UPI and what you rightly said, the Jan Dhan Yojana, the Mudra Yojana, and so many others, even COVID, right, the way we handled, all of that. Is there a way for India to really lead the world, with governments and nations on transformation at a country level? How do we see countries and therefore the world transform? Can India really position itself somewhere there over the next 25 years? And how do you see that happening?
I think, again, a very, very relevant point, and I think absolutely doable and will happen. Not only doable, it will happen. I'll tell you why. You take any country in the West, and I won't name countries, large parts of Europe, for sure, even further west. If you look at a simple payment, like a UPI transaction in India, doesn't exist. And again, QR code combined doesn't exist. So I have people coming in from US, family who are amazed at what is available here and love to deal with our technology to buy things and stuff in India. So the question is, where can we take this? I think we need to take this first to countries which are at an emerging status. The entire African continent, to me, appears a great opportunity. Then to those countries in Europe which are behind, and then indeed to the more developed countries. This doesn't exist anywhere. Even if they were to develop it, the cost that they will spend in doing it is going to be, I would say, several X times Indian costs. Because when I've had an opportunity now look at this in more detail in the last 1.5 years, the cost at which this architecture is built is a fraction of what it will take the global leaders to do this. If I were to take a shot, we have built it at 1/10 of the cost it would have taken in the West. And if you talk to any of the digitech or the fintech startups, it is all freeware, it is all open source, it is all their own people no big name has been involved in this. And a perfectly working model has been rolled out in a very quick time. So to me, it's something to be very proud of. Now comes what you said. We need to productize this and take it abroad. But that itself also will add something else to another layer to, I think, the India, I would say, brand, as it were. For example, today, for a long period of time, all settlement takes place on one platform, not for any other reason, but that was the only platform available for banks globally. Now, UPI can easily become a platform for like-minded people to trade and settle. And other things that are done by Reserve Bank, including the central bank digital currency, all come together. So you have a currency which can be settled very easily. You have the settlement mechanism which could be done. So it could be on a bipartite basis or a multi-party basis, depending on where you want. But we then stand on our own feet in our ability to settle with our trading partners and business partners. And we will use all global settlement systems also simultaneously. So productize it, stand on your own feet, and have the ability to transact on a wider base is what is all of them plus UPI plus RuPay, a whole lot of things can be taken at very low cost and ported to other countries. And then I think brand India as a technology provider will truly stand out.
And sectorally also you see this happening, right? Across, say, healthcare, you see that happening across agriculture, you see it, because today you use the word tech after the word or digital before. It makes complete sense, right? So India can take this to the world. Yeah.
100%, it can be used in every single thing. You mentioned Covin and that app. That app to me is a stellar app. I think we have not given credit for that app the extent that we should give that app, because it dealt with 1.5 billion people. It was real time, and I have seen very few failures there. There would have been multiple 100,000 customers or citizens getting onto that app simultaneously. You always got your OTP. You could always log in. There wasn't, except in the first 1 week or so. After that, it was absolutely stable. And I don't think there is any other example that we can put anywhere in the world that in such a quick time, such a mass application became stable and provided service of a great order. So to me, I think there are several such stacks, and I'm not going into it. There are people who have delayered, I would say, an organization and made it into an SAS type of opportunity. I saw somebody, hospitals, all supplies to hospitals, completely delayered and outsourced at maybe 1/5 or 1/10 the cost that the hospital would have spent on doing it and running it themselves. So every single thing to me is a product. And I think in the next 2 years, we'll see momentum in that product. At this point in time, everybody's concentrating on domestic, but global will happen.
You've always been a strong supporter and a pioneer when it comes to new technology, innovation, even like the ATM concept, right, in banks, so many other things that you took up, right, and you continue to believe in the power of technology to transform not only countries but people's lives, right? And I know you've done that. What gives you that? When did belief really come into you, and how has that moved over these, say, last few decades? I know it's a little personal question, but I'd just love to know that, right? Because you're so optimistic, that the future of India, you based on that. I remember the conversations we've had in the past.
I will answer that in a very short thing, because otherwise too many decades. The first time I was exposed to a machine was in 1980 when I was setting up ICS's leading department, and I needed technology for doing a few things. And those days, your own, it's a tabletop machine that you had, a single piece. And we used it, and it's the first time I found that you don't need an IT department, you can do things yourself. There's something called SuperCalc, which is, today you could call it your Excel. And there was something called WordPerfect, which is your Word. And you had a database management system. With these three, my colleagues, none of whom were techies, a couple of chartered accountants, myself, we could make the machine dance. So then you believe that you could harness the energy of the machine yourself rather than go through a tech department. And that's what we did in 96, 97 in ICSI when we rolled out. Then theory of constraints. We had to roll out ATM technology because ICICI Bank had some 200 or 300 branches, and we were given 50 new branches a year initially. And the largest competitor had 10,000 branches. So how do you get there? 50 branches a year, 10,000 branches. You said you will roll out ATMs, 1,000 ATMs in 1 year, then internet banking, then call centers, back offices, and so on. So a combination of constraints, opportunity that's arising, ability to take a leap forward and proceed. Now, I won't talk more of ICICI. I'm talking now of the youngsters of today. I'm seeing them do the same thing. And the incumbents, I think, have to learn from these new course. I call them new course. In the entire digitech field, whichever field, finance, healthcare, manufacturing, whichever. These guys are now taking a leap out. They are keeping their eyes and ears open. They are the first assimilators of new technology. They are not scared of working at the boundary, at the margin, and they're making it happen. They're making it happen. So I hope that it becomes a lesson for the incumbents. They quickly, in a way, arrange their own mind, as it were, because this is going to be otherwise a very interesting competitive landscape. And I would think that as of today, the new course, the digitech startups have the upper hand. So incumbents need to be come up to speed, tackle this, but it's all for the good.
No, I don't think they'll have a choice. Over the last decade, Kamath, we've been building new age businesses, around Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, right? Those who are even like 14, 15 years old today, they are so digitally native, right? I mean, there is no way that they're going to be anywhere else, at least as of today, the way we see them. And we build businesses, in gaming and, wellness and livelihoods and new ways of engaging. And it's crazy the way their behavior has moved and shaped. So I think incumbents and others, if they want to get the future consumers, or, when you talk of in India 2047, the consumption base at that time, I don't know where technologies will take us, in this period, but definitely having an adaptability to change, use technology and make it integral, to the process is going to be, so important. And I know while we've talked about all the positive and, all the opportunities that exist, I think another way to look at, the crisis or I would say the global challenges that we face today, right? Both the uncertainty, the supply chains getting divided, the geopolitical situation, of course, the impact of COVID. I don't even know whether we're still through with that. And so many other factors, that are playing out today in these uncertain times. I think over history, we've seen India's resilience, of course, come up, but sometimes it's taken longer than we've expected for certain changes due to a lot of geopolitical uncertainties. But how do you see us building that resilience over these next 25 years? What do you think it will take? What is it that we should definitely be doing as a country and as citizens of the country if we want to make sure India is able to not only overcome these challenges but actually use this as an opportunity for us to emerge?
I think very good question, Rajan. And if we had this discussion and you'd asked me this question, say 3 years back, I would have said this is a challenge and I do not know how it will play out. We need to work on it. But I've had a mindset change post-COVID, because in the first 6 months of COVID, when we were all locked out, I could see everybody's mind got reset. And I mean, at that point of time, whenever I was speaking in a virtual mode, I've used this phrase, minds got reset in the blink of an eye. And I think it taught me a lesson that don't underestimate resilience. I'll give you two examples. One, in our own building, the apartment complex I am in. Within the first 2 days, because shops were shut, the women got together and set up supply chains. Within 7-8 days, it became supply chain from the field virtually, from somewhere, wherever some agriculture produce, fresh produce is grown into your home. Initially, payment was at the gate when the supply came. But within 10 days, it became to some sort of digital. Within 2 weeks, the supplier had set up an app and was expecting payment on the app. And within, like say, a few days after that, it became like UPI payment and online payment. So you had prepaid your stuff. It came in, there was hands-off delivery left on this at the gate, and you went down and fetched it at the right time. And I'm sure this has happened throughout. I'm just using as an example of how quickly this happened. But the key here was not only the supplier who was probably in the remote area, but when I look at the I call them the leaders in this at the apartment level, the women. Older women who did not and never in their life had used to say an Excel sheet. Basically saying, how do I operate an Excel sheet? What is Google Sheet? Learning and then, in a way, doing good with it. In the sense that whatever was needed to get on with it was gotten done in the blink of an eye. If this can happen at that level, people who are older, I'm talking of people 60s, late 60s, their mind got reset. Youngsters are, they have grown up in this field. Whether it is in the abject, rural area, the most backward, as we call it, rural area in terms of technology and development not having reached, or in the most developed part of any city. I think technology is a leveler. Everybody has same access to technology and they know how to fiddle with technology, play with technology, put it to good use. So today it has become a leveler. Second advantage that is there is the cost of technology. So acquiring the hardware and the software, the data cost, going down to the level we have has made it equal. Again, becomes a big provider of resilience to this. The third is, I said there were two parts. One was, I said people mindset. So the people mindset, I'm thinking aloud, I would like to use this phrase. Demographic had a particular meaning earlier, young people. I say that demographic definitions were shredded apart by the first 1 month of COVID, when older people became as agile, as nimble as younger people. So you now have a demographic which stretches from people who are toddlers or youngsters who are toddlers to old people who are probably walking around with a stick. Everybody is agile and nimble enough to use it. The second one is from industry. This is a very interesting example. Probably you were there in the council meeting where I shared this. I talked to Gopal Srinivasan, maybe October or so of 2020. I said, Gopal, is production back to normal in Chennai? He said, mostly around 95 to 100%. I said, have your people come back? He said, no, Mr. Kamath, only 75% have come back. I said, then how are you, how is industry reaching 95, 100%? Oh, some process change, some digital, that. So basically between new technology, process change and so on, in my term, you had gained probably 20-25% productivity gain. And you could then see that sort of productivity gain translating into their P&L in the next few quarters. So clearly mindset got reset there also. So you've got a reset in mind at the shop floor level what to do. You have a reset in mind of the general janta, as it were. So what is required is probably a reset of incumbent players in terms of their ability to use technology and harness technology. Otherwise, I think the resilience is there. I'm not worried about it.
And you saw in these times, also a lot of new models emerge, right? Especially with digital proliferation. We saw blockchain, cryptocurrencies. We've seen the deepening of that. And then, of course, also the crisis that followed. So I think we will face these kind of challenges as new technology gets adopted, and newer ways of operating keeps coming up. But tell me just quickly before we move to some of the other topics that are there, since our time has really run fast and we have 10 minutes on this specific area of how the financial markets will get kind of not disrupted, but the impact of crypto and some of these things. Would you have any thoughts around some of these emerging tech challenges that would come up over the future?
See, again, if we look at newer products, crypto was touted as a newer product, but any product without an underlying, in financial jargon we call it underlying, something that denotes underlying value will fail, and that's what again the governor of the Reserve Bank was always saying that this has no underlying value. And some of us also said, saying this has no underlying value. And now, I think globally it is accepted that it has no underlying value. So I think these fads won't happen. But what will prevail? What will prevail indeed is central bank digital currency will prevail. Online, settling and online transacting will prevail. And with or without blockchain, because again, blockchain was, you built, you said crypto on blockchain. That is why, and then you see it had an application. And then you try to confuse matters by saying blockchain is crypto, crypto is blockchain. So I think robust platforms will be built with or without blockchain. So I'm not going to go into that. But the financial system will innovate. in terms of transactions, settlement, and so on and so forth in using technology in an agile and active manner. I'll just give a data input. We built ICICI technology with the premise that Moore's law is alive and kicking. That is, the price performance ratio will improve at a square every year, and of course, costs will drop. A few years back, I was talking to Vishal Sikka, formerly of Infosys, and I asked him about AI. He said, AI, the price performance ratio is doubling every 3.5 years, or 3.5 months, not every 2 years, 3.5 months. So you can imagine what was happening in the year. And this is about 3 years back. Recently, I was talking to him and he said, now the price performance ratio of software, not hardware, software is doubling every year. So you have a whole lot of things that are converging in terms of your ability to bring costs down and for common good. And I think we are going to ride that. India is going to ride that. I just want to touch on this. If you see, we have benefited from riding a whole lot of technologies when costs have already disrupted down. Take, for example, solar energy. From almost 20 rupees per unit, we are down to 2.5 rupees per unit. And our massive expansion is happening at 2.5 rupees per unit effective cost. Telecom, I won't go on. So we are again able to harvest these benefits as we go along, and that's going to be to our good.
Yeah, and I think it's what you rightly said is the young people, right, who are not only using this technology but also going to kind of create this, right, and position India, in that position as we go ahead, to the world. And the demography, while you talked of the demography being extended from a digital usage, etc., we still remain, amongst the youngest countries in the world, right? I think our young people, 1 in 10 people in the world is an Indian under the age of 25 even today. So over the next 25 years, this is going to be the productive workforce, not only for India, for the world. What's your message to the young people of this country?
Yeah, the young people, to me, in the last 3 years, they have demonstrated what they could do. We are talking about the entire digital universe, which will account for at least 25% of the economy. And I am convinced that they are the ones who will drive this. They are the ones who will drive the service economy of this country. And of course, what they have done and the discoveries that they have done and the knowledge and thought that they have brought to the table will then permeate into incumbents and what I call older industries. But if they drive 25% of the economy for the next 5 years, we are home in terms of what we want to achieve. India at 140 billion economy, because that is the piece that they push in place. The rest of it, 6, 7, 8% growth, all our traditional businesses will push and get it there. But the missing link to me was this, and seeing what has been achieved in the last 3, 4 years, they are the people, 21, 22 years. Even today, I tell incumbents that you want technology transformation in your company, tell me how many below 25-year-old people are around the CEO. If you are going to tell me that your incumbent structure is going to do it, no. So you empower a group of 4 or 5, not more than that, young people around you, and see what will happen. Because they see a different thing through a different lens. And you ought to see through their lens, and then you will learn.
No, I think that's such a powerful and important, message for everyone to take back. But the young people, right, to enable them to perform to their best potential, right? I mean, what you rightly said, we've got the numbers, we have them there. What should they be doing? I know acquiring skills is something. Is there any specific message or a routine or something that you've seen? Because you've been one of the biggest believers in the power of the youth. I mean, I cannot identify anybody but someone like you in all these years that I've met. What tell young people? How do you get them to do their best?
All that young people have to do is keep their ears and eyes open, and they are doing it. You have to just go on Google and search who has been the fastest growing YouTube blogger who creates content on a daily basis. It's a 21-year-old kid who is probably just about high school. He has probably the highest number of subscribers and highest number of daily views. His daily views are around 6 million. He's making $500 per million, which is good for him. And 6 million you can multiply, and 365 days he's blogging. Now, he comes from a village. If you see the village that he came from, where there is no sewage, there is no water supply in place. And from there, he has a single telephone, with a single phone, he started blogging and see where he has reached. I think this becomes inspiration to, he's got what? Now 1.5 crores of followers. He's 1.5 crore followers. And this forms what I call a very positive ecosystem. And only goes to prove that technology is today pervasive. And whatever technology, now he blogs, it's all right. We are talking of corporate. The same mindset has to be brought here and, it could be done. We need to look at what is out there and see how do we want to be a part of it.
Yeah, the youth spirit of go get it and make it happen. I think very, 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 very important. As we come to the last few minutes, Kamath, I have to, take you back to that journey of, India at 75, where, CK Prahlad, yourself, we really came together as a group and envisioned, where India would be in 2022. And we really here, we've just completed, our Amrit Mahotsav, and we are entered 23. And this next phase, I still remember you mentioning that all these marathons have to be run in 100-meter sprints. 25 years is a long time. How do we measure ourselves every few years? How do we really put processes in place? And I'm sure, the underlying optimism that you have talked of will be achieved. But if you were to, I would say, dream of the India of 2025, right? Like you go to bed and you wake up in that India of 2025, right? What do you see, right? How do you dream? What's your vision? How do you really envision that India of 2047? And also underlying that is your youthful aspiration for that.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I would think we need to make sure happens is that aspiration of what we used to term as the bottom of the pyramid, those aspirations have been met. And at the simplest, they could mean that they have an abode, they have water supply, they have other means of, and they have livelihood. This would be the minimum layer that we need to ensure. So whatever we have to do has to be done keeping that in mind, which again is to me a growth opportunity, because if you address the village and build infrastructure and the basics in the village, including homes and things like that, or encourage them to build homes and give them the livelihood to do this, I think you are halfway to success, because that's a large market for us and that's a large opportunity. And then you layer each part of the economy and overlay what you've seen somewhere else, achievable and achieved. So then we cut from the village to the urban. I would like to say every urban clearly climate-wise has got climate under control, transportation-wise has got transportation under control, and has become a hub of economic activity, which means that and around you, you see all the things that you would love to see, you've seen elsewhere but are not there today, whether it is cleanliness, whether it is greenery, and so on and so forth. So I would think that there are measurable benchmarks we can set ourselves against and aim for, whether it is urban or whether it is rural, and make sure that happens. I think wealth itself, I don't think is going to be the key differentiator. It is basically meeting aspirations and creating a livelihood where you believe that what you would have liked to have, you have got.
I think we are in a very unique point in history, where I think India is going to see this shift and jump, and it's only a matter of time that we can embark on this journey and actually see that change happen together. It's been such an energizing 45 minutes. I've taken so much of your time, always as usual, exciting, optimistic, about the future of India. And I'm sure what we have discussed today, will be different aspects of what we have spoken will be used in many, many, areas, whether it's in the private sector, in the government sector, and many others, to see how we can position India where it needs to be in 2047. So again, Kamath, thank you so much for being here, sparing your time and guiding and helping us navigate this maze of where India can reach in 2047. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajan, and thank you. All good wishes to all the participants. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.